Don't worry, there's nothing wrong with your camera. I'm just in a darkroom right now, loading film into a container. If you want to see coffee developing black and white film, that's coming right up. What's going on here? What am I doing? Why am I in the dark? I came across this article the other day that was talking about using coffee to develop black and white film. And I thought that's quite interesting. So as I started reading about it, I learned that it's called Caffenol. And Caffenol uses instant coffee, washing soda, a little bit of vitamin C, and you use that instead of developer. And I just thought that was really kind of interesting. So I grabbed the camera, the 645, and I went out and shot some images at the shop of different people that we know, just so we could see how it turns out. Then I went to the grocery store, got myself some Arm & Hammer Super washing soda. It's super. Got some vitamin C and some instant coffee. So what is this Caffenol? Caffenol is this alternative process that they use phenol, sodium carbonate, and vitamin C to create what they call an aqueous solution that will work as a film and print developer. But why the coffee? Evidently in coffee there's something called caffeic acid. And the caffeic acid is the basic active ingredient that causes development in film. My understanding is that the caffeic acid in the coffee is what causes the development, along with controlling the pH. So all of this was started by a guy named Scott Williams, who's a professor at RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology. He actually has a short white paper out there that you can read. I'll put a link in the description below. But I read it, and it's quite interesting. Let's see what he says here. It's called A Use for That Last Cup of Coffee, Film and Paper Development. And this is back from 1995. I reached out to Professor Williams to see what he thought. And I asked him, I said, hey, Professor, what made you do this? Like, how does it even come to what sparked that idea to use the coffee? Professor Williams writes back, Hi Jay, the process started off more broadly. The purpose of the exercise was to demonstrate that photographic developers have a chemical properties and not just a package of powder one buys at the store. So I wanted the students to make parallels and connections. So we first covered developer chemistry in class. Then I challenged the class to go off and see if they could find natural or home items that could function as a photographic developer. Coffee and mint both rose to the top. They needed to recognize, research the structure-function relationships between commercial developers and these natural products, such as coffee. I did not hand them coffee. A student, through his research, hypothesized that coffee would work, and the rest, as they say, is history. Thanks, Professor Williams. That actually is quite great. I'm so thankful for that you wrote back to me. So if you go online, there's a place called Caffenol, caffenol.com, that's kind of the repository of these recipes for basic coffee brewing, but also a whole bunch of other stuff that they're using. I remember seeing one guy doing beer as a developer. Someone was using chutney. I mean, really interesting stuff. And all of these have different impacts on the film itself. So for the shoot, I went down to the local camera store and I picked up this Fujifilm Arcos 102. I wanted to get something that had really fine grain, really nice quality of a film. This is something I've never worked with before, so I thought that let's try that, and it's fresh. I didn't want to use some older film because I've never done this process before, and I wanted to try to give it the best possible chance that we could give it. As I was mixing up the developer, I realized that, well, I don't have anything but developer now, and I need to have something called a fixer. I totally didn't have any, so I had to run out and get some. So I got this. This is from a company called Sprint Speed Fixer. What is a fixer? A fixer is basically a salt-based solution that takes the silver halide crystals and fixes them to the film and prevents it then from oxidation, prevents it from fogging, prevents it from deteriorating after the process is done. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our developer, basically till it fills up. Start our timer. 11 minutes. We're going to do 11 minutes. And The nice thing about the Patterson, they have these tools where you can actually put that in and stir it. Oh, but one thing we want to do is we also want to give it a nice hard tap. The reason we're tapping is because we want to get any kind of bubbles that are preventing the developer from touching the film off of the film. So we're going to agitate for about the first minute. All right, so about the first minute of agitation, now we're just going to wait. All right, coming up to the first minute, we're going to agitate. Again, just about a 5-second agitation is good. Another way that you could do it is you could actually take the twister out, and we could use the cap, and you could do full agitation where you actually rotate the tank. This time we'll rotate the tank. I'd like to give it a tap if I would do that in case there's any bubbles that are adhering themselves to the film. As you can see, it's not a terribly exciting process. So we don't have any indicator stop bath, just going to use water. We're going to do about 30 seconds of washing. The idea of stop bath is just to clean off the developer from the film, to stop it from developing. Alright, that's plenty. The fixer will actually take us 3 minutes, so let's set the timer for 3 minutes. We're going to add the fixer. This time we're going to add all of it because that should be just enough. Of course, we're going to start that, hit our timer, and 1 minute of agitation. All right, there we go. Everything in film processing is a waiting game. And now it's just time to wash. After fixing, the process is essentially done. What we're doing now is just washing the film just to make sure that it washes off any of the excess residue. Also, you don't need to have such a hard wash on it. We'll go to a light wash. So we're going to do this for about a total of 20 minutes. It's been about 20 minutes of washing. There it is. I admit I'm a little bit concerned. I don't know what's going to happen. Will it turn out well? Just upon initial, it looks like there's some kind of images. Okay, so from here they look a little bit light. So if you look, it looks pretty light. That's a bit concerning. So it doesn't look like we got, well, maybe. I think it's underdeveloped. All right, let's see. Let's pull it off here. So like I said, one of the nice things is that we can just twist it apart and the whole thing, the reel comes apart, which allows us to pull the film out of it. Yeah, look at that. We can see here, it's very, very light. This specialized clamp pedal is the C47. Clamp it down at the bottom. We'll let the film dry for a few hours and then come back and see how it turned out. Hopefully we'll get something of what it looks like. Like, wow, there's a lot of detail missing. There's possibilities here. The problem is the developing is so light. that for most of them, there's not too much detail. We're gonna try to see if we can harvest the images off of this roll. Let's give it a try. All right, so this project started about, I don't know, must be at least 2 weeks. No, it's probably 3-4 weeks ago. But what did I think about it? I do recall now there were certain days when I was shooting some of the shots where, we were shooting outside, but it was really overcast. So the meter at 100 ISO was telling me that we should be exposing at 1.4, at f1.4. The 80mm lens only goes down to f1.8, so that means we're not exposing correctly. We're underexposing, and I think that's evident in the negative, because actually the images overall look pretty good. So as I'm looking at them, they look pretty decent. This one of Sergio, I think, is really, it's probably the best one from a sharpness perspective of the group. Some of the other ones tend to have more like haziness to the dark, like a kind of a dark coating, and I'm not sure whether that was necessarily just improper exposure. Maybe that was part of the underexposed shots, or maybe it could be with the coffee developer acted with the film. And then some of them were a little bit soft, or it seemed not necessarily soft, but they seem a little bit hazy. Like this one of Stefano, it looks a little bit on the hazy side. And then some of them I think are just underexposed. That's why Joey looks so dark. Or maybe that's overexposure, I'm not sure. But when you look really closely at some of these photos, the grain structure really does look like a nicely fine-grained film, which makes me wonder, if I was doing this, like this one with Bob's got nice contrast. If I was doing this with a normal, quote-unquote, normal developer, how would these have turned out? Like some of these look a little bit dark, like the one with Gabby, or maybe losing some of the detail. And then there's some that turned out really kind of old world, like the one here with Audrey. It looks really, kind of like almost dreamlike, which was kind of an interesting effect. And I can only guess that it's from the way that the developer acted with the film. This one with Dave Clark, it has a overall darker tone-ish, but I don't even know if I would say it's dark. It's got that weird kind of coloration to it. Even the other Dave Anderson too. But there's really kind of an interesting surreal quality to the images that I kind of find interesting. Like the cake. I love the cake. Maybe like this waffle. I really wanted to get one. So if you're enjoying this kind of coffee videos and you'd like to see more, of course, look through our videos here on this channel. Of course, if you would like some coffee, especially if you want to use coffee to make Caffenol, SproCoffee.com. We've got it all there for you. You get a subscription, get 10% off, blah, 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 blah. I also want to say thank you very much to Dr. Williams at RIT for taking the time to answer my email. And I hope you get to see this video. And I'd love to hear any additional thoughts you might have on the whole process that I've done, whether I've done it, maybe I've done it wrong. And you could tell me that you've totally missed the mark. So at the end of the day, what do I really think about the Caffenol developer? I think it's a fascinating exploration. I think it's interesting to try. Would I do it again? If I had shot this segment of the video right after we did the developing, I would have probably said no. I would have said no. I would have been much more negative about it than I am now, a couple weeks removed. I've had time to think about it. I've had time to look at the images and just kind of get a better feel for it. And so I think there's really an interesting exploration to be had with this kind of alternative developer. And of course, with alternative developers, you never know really what's going to happen. You don't really know what the results are going to be unless you've used it a lot, which I haven't. If you're looking for something experimental, if you want to just play around with coffee, I think it's really a fun thing to do. But I think the Caffenol is worth an exploration if you're into photography. It's been quite a while since I did a lot of shooting with film, and it's so I don't really have too much of a baseline anymore to really compare. I think it'd be really interesting to take similar shots, similar exposures, and run it through a commercial developer to just get a comparison as to how it works. I think at the end of the day, though, if you're looking to experiment, Caffenol can be a great way to go. It's relatively expensive, it's easy to get, it's environmentally friendly. But if you're looking for something that has consistent results and predictable results, it's better to go with one of the commercial developers that's a known quantity. All right, so until next time, thank you very much for tuning in. Have a great one.